The game that started it all, Resident Evil, launched on the Sony PlayStation on the 22nd of March 1996. At the time of its release, it became the highest selling game on the platform, totaling just over 5 million units. With a Metacritic of 91%, fans and critics alike were blown away at the jaw-dropping graphics, atmosphere, and sound design, with one reviewer stating, "Capcom has produced the perfect interactive movie." With over 25 years worth of history with the franchise, we know how successful this IP has gone on to become, but to really put it into context, not only is Resident Evil Capcom's biggest IP, with combined sales of 123 million units, it's branched into all aspects of entertainment, from TV and movies to comics and action figures. Resident Evil is often credited as defining the survival horror genre and is responsible for bringing zombies back to pop culture status, something which even 25 years on is still going strong. But where did it begin? The project was conceived by producer Tokuro Fujiwara as a follow-up of his 1989 horror game Sweet Home, with development duties handed to Shinji Mikami. Development at this time was troubled, with several revisions. It started on the SNES in 1993, but with 3D graphics on the horizon and a growing scope, the game switched to the upcoming PlayStation in 1994 for a first-person 3D shooter. But after considerable hurdles in realizing this vision, with the power available to them, they decided to get clever and work around these restrictions by utilizing 3D character models in pre-rendered 2D backgrounds. To mask loading, they incorporated door animations, and as rooms could only be made up of 8 still images, they split rooms into upper and lower levels to accommodate it. And I think that's what makes the PS1 generation my favorite. Game devs had extensive vision, wanting to pioneer gaming in a 3D space, but didn't have the power to do everything they wanted, and as such, they had to design their worlds in specific ways to be able to get as close as possible to their intended vision. It created this landscape that was incredibly varied title by title, as devs tried to push the limitations of the console, one game at a time. And personally, I find it's often in these restrictions that the secret sauce is made. Just think about it. What would Resident Evil be like if it didn't have these workarounds? Would the mansion design be as impactful as it is? Would the lack of door opening animations destroy a feeling of apprehension? Would we still consider it a landmark in gaming, like we did upon its release? Now, my experience with Resident Evil dates back to 1997. I was out shopping with my gran in Woolworths. It was a simpler time, a time when decent box art was all you needed to sell copies. I was scanning the selection of games when my eyes locked with this constipated man squinting at me from across the aisle.
It will be mine. Oh yes, it will be mine.
Fortunately, my gran didn't give a single fuck about age ratings, so 8-year-old me was good to go, and the rest was history. Now, it's been a hell of a long time since then. More than 20 years have passed since I last experienced it. So, this review I aim to explain what works, what doesn't, and ultimately, does it hold up in 2022? As with all my other reviews, this will be split into plot, gameplay, and presentation. So let's dive in. Now, I could sit here and explain the setup to the plot, or I can show you the best live action scene ever put to film.
Alpha Team is flying around the forest zone situated in northwest Raccoon City, where we're searching for the helicopter of our compatriots Bravo Team, who disappeared during the middle of our mission.
You haven't found it?
No, I haven't found it yet. Bizarre murder cases have recently occurred in Raccoon City. There are outlandish reports of families being attacked by a group of about 10 people. Victims were apparently eaten. Bravo Team went to the hideout of the group and disappeared.
Look, Chris!
It was Bravo Team's helicopter. Nobody was in it. But strangely, most of the equipment was still there. However, we soon discovered why.
Hey! Come here! Run for that house!
Chris Redfield. Jill Valentine. Barry Burton. Rebecca Chambers. Albert Wesker. Resident Evil.
So epic. The narrator, the fire, the Wesker comeback, Barry Big Bushy Beard Burton. What a joy that is. I'm sure there's some alternative reality where we got this as a movie and not whatever the hell Welcome to Raccoon City was.
God. Sorry. I farted.
Moving it back on track, the plot of Resident Evil 1 is simple in premise, but with plenty of room to elaborate in future entries. In this one, we learn Umbrella, a major pharmaceutical corporation, are conducting bioweapon experiments. Albert Wesker, an employee of Umbrella and team captain of STARS, sends his team into the danger zone so he can collect combat data. And that's about it. Now, I'm well versed in Resident Evil Remake, and so going back to the original, I was shocked at how little lore there actually is. Remake has 28 files which help grow the world and flesh out the history of the mansion and its creator, George Trevor. But here, there's none of that. There's a grand total of 15 files, of which 3 of them are just passcodes with biblical text. You get enough information to know what caused the outbreak to happen, and the ramifications for individuals as told through the diary entries. But that's really about it. It made me realise just how much Remake did to further expand on this story. The world of Resident Evil had ballooned by its release 6 years later, so taking the time to go back and give the fans even more information, both past and present, is a nice touch that I hadn't fully appreciated before. So, does that mean the original plot felt underwhelming? No, not at all. I think this story does exactly what it needs to do. It gets you into the world, explains what caused the events up to this point, and creates a tone of desperation as you learn how the staff working at the mansion either succumbed to the virus or ended their own life. It's dark, it's harrowing, and it's truly engaging. Now I could talk through the different choices in the game and how they affect the ending, the differences with Chris and Jill's campaign when it comes to the plot, and the characters you meet along the way, but to be honest, I'll be rehashing old ground. I covered this extensively in my Resident Evil Remake review, and there really isn't too much when it comes to differences to be worth expanding upon. So for the sake of your time, I'll move on. Fixed cameras, tank controls, and limited inventory. Does it get any better? I will forever be addicted to this classic Resident Evil formula, and this is where it all began. Choosing either Chris Redfield or Jill Valentine, you begin exploring the Spencer Mansion, where you need to solve puzzles and find items around the environment to collect keys to unlock additional rooms, which then give extra items to solve earlier puzzles, all the while contending with the myriad of enemies shuffling through the halls. The fusion of point-and-click adventure titles with action was a revelation back on its release, and it still holds up incredibly well today, and it's all thanks to its design philosophy. Let me explain. The tank controls restrict your ability to move, which turns the tight corridors and bullet sponge enemies into real obstacles in your path. The fixed camera not only adds a cinematic flair to the action on screen, it also creates blind spots. This restricts you to solely rely on audio cues to identify the looming threat. You can only carry 6 items as Chris and 8 as Jill, meaning each item needs to have considerable thought put into them. Now, do you take that extra heal to give yourself a bit of safety, at the risk of running out of room for that last key item you've been desperately searching for? And finally, item scarcity. The ammo, heals and saves are limited. You need to pick your targets, as there isn't enough ammo to deal with every threat. All of this is designed to restrict the player, to make you feel vulnerable. You can't run through with careless disregard. It wants you to take your time, plan, strategize. Now combine this slower pace with a musical score that makes your hair stand on end, and you've got effective atmosphere. Now, I know this game, but even with that, the feeling of tension and dread is so effective that decades after its release, it's still scary. The jump scares got me, even when I knew they were coming. For this review, I decided to tackle the director's cut, which released in September 1997. It collects the original game, but with 2 notable differences. Firstly, auto-aiming was added to the English versions of the game. Now, for some ungodly reason, it wasn't included back on the original release. Now, I don't know if Japan hates us, or if they thought we could take the challenge, but either way, I was glad to see it implemented here. Secondly, they added difficulty modes. When you boot the game, you have a choice of standard, which is playing the game through as it originally was, training, for those who might find it a struggle, and advanced, which I'll unpack for you. The gameplay you've been watching so far is split into my standard playthrough, which I did first as Jill, and then advanced, which I did as Chris. There's several differences between the 2 modes. Firstly, the difficulty is increased. Enemies move quicker, there are more of them, and they hit hard. Heals, saves, and ammunition are reduced across the entire game. And to top it all off, enemy placement and key items are changed, meaning you need to take completely different routes, not knowing where enemies are going to be. It was incredible. It felt like a completely different game, and I got my ass handed to me time and time again. Zombies took a clip of handgun ammo to take down, and hunters, well, they became nightmare fuel. The amount of times I ran the one section from the outhouse to saving Rebecca seemed infinite. It caused me to do something that I never thought I'd have to do. I used my Magnum. Now, for context, I'm the guy that normally gets into the end boss looking like Arnie in Commando. I save every heavy-hitting weapon I can find till that final conflict, and then I'm gutted when I end it in 5 shots of the Magnum. Here, that was impossible. The hunters are truly weapons of mass destruction. I was stun-locked, decapitated, shanked into the next dimension. I was at my breaking point when I finally caved. It felt weirdly freeing to know that I had to rely on everything I had to get by. It was something I haven't had with a Resident Evil game in a long time. To be faced with the possibility that I might have bitten off more than I can chew, to see my limits as a player, and then surpass them through sheer determination. It really got me thinking, why don't they do this with every entry? It feels obvious. RE7 incorporated a similar mode with Madhouse difficulty, but that's all I can think of. To give a seasoned player the ability to dive back into a game they know and change everything to the point where their memory means nothing would add longevity to a game without really needing huge amounts of work. We can only hope that whenever Capcom decide to milk us with classic releases, they take the time to incorporate this style of director's cut. Now, if you're considering going back to the original, I'd implore you to follow my example and experience director's cut. On its launch, it was worth the price of admission, and even 25 years on, it still holds up. I played director's cut on the PlayStation Classic. It meant I could get the gameplay captured while having a very similar experience as I did all those years ago. And let's be real here, it's 2022. I'm not lugging a CRT upstairs like I'm fucking Atlas while trying to thumb in a Scarcity just to have a authentic experience. I'm not that guy. So, when it comes to presentation, I've already touched on the music already, but just to labor the point here, the soundtrack is incredible. It's perfectly suited to the environment, with each area having its own themes, and they all create an emotional response. Be that creating a sense of apprehension, to wanting to suit up and kick some ass towards the end of the game. Now I bet you're thinking, but Davey, what about the bunch of clowns farting into trumpets down in the basement? Well, don't fear. We are playing Director's Cut, not the DualShock edition. Instead of this, we get this. The music isn't the only part of the sound which is exceptional. It's the entire soundscape. From the menu bleeps to an exploding zombie head, every sound is beefy, iconic, and sets my nostalgia into overdrive. Now I can't review Resident Evil and skip over the performances. It's been covered to death. We all know how bad these are. But if you haven't heard them for a while, I'm going to show you how it's worse than you ever imagined.
Oh no, you must be kidding! After we've come all the way here!
Ladies first. Go first, Jill.
But Chris!
Give me a chance to play nice guy.
Okay, I leave it up to you. See you again at the heliport. Wesker!
Jill, so you're safe.
That's what I was going to say. Where on earth have you been? You disappeared from the hall all of a sudden.
I'm sorry, but I have my reasons. Perhaps you guys have met them? It was all I could do to protect myself against those strange creatures.
Is that right? Anyway, it's good to see you're safe.
Jill, our first priority is to get out of here.
Yes, you're right.
Jesus Christ.
Gaming at this time was in its glow-up stage. We're a couple of years out from Metal Gear Solid revolutionizing the field of voice work, but common sense would tell you these performances and writing were nothing short of dog shit. The crazy thing is, it's 26 years on, and these performances are truly legendary. It's like a cheesy dad joke. We all roll our eyes, but secretly, we love them, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Going back to Resident Evil was a joy. Not only is it my favourite style of Resident Evil, but the Director's Cut advanced content gave me a fresh experience with the game that I never knew I needed. Replaying the game made me realise just how incredible Remake was in elevating what was here before, taking the lore and deepening it, taking areas which in the original are quite lackluster, like the Aqua Ring, and making them unforgettable parts of the game, and that takes nothing away from what is here as a base experience. It's perfectly paced and entertaining throughout. Replaying Resident Evil was hugely nostalgic for me, and I know that can influence my perception, but in all intents and purposes, the game achieves what it sets out to do. It brings you to the edge of your seat and keeps you there. all due to its incredible gameplay, which stands tall all these years later. It's a true masterpiece in every single way, an icon of gaming, and rightly so. And that's it for this review. If you enjoyed the video, put a like on it and consider subscribing for more Resident Evil content. I try to respond to everyone on my channel, so let me know your thoughts on the game and we can get into it. Up next on the channel is a review of Resident Evil 2 before I unveil my final tier list on the entire series. Now, if you're still craving a little bit more from me, check out my podcast, In PS We Trust. It's a PlayStation podcast where me and my co-host crack a few beers and discuss the latest news, rumours and hype for all things PlayStation. I'll have links in the description below. Thanks for watching. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other. See ya.